T-minus 60 seconds and counting. We passed T-minus 60. 55 seconds and counting. Neil Armstrong just reported back. It's been a real smooth countdown. We passed the 50-second mark. Power transfer is complete. We're on internal power with the launch vehicle at this time. 40 seconds away from the Apollo 11 liftoff. All the second stage tanks now pressurized. 35 seconds and counting. We are still go with Apollo 11. 30 seconds and counting. Astronauts report it feels good. T-minus 25 seconds. 20 seconds and counting. T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal. 12, 11, 10, 9. Ignition sequence starts. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11.
Well, hello and welcome to this edition of the Bullpen. As always, I am James Roy, and with me is Tom Chavarria. I think. Tom, are you there? Oh, sorry, your screen's a little foggy.
I am. I'm trying to figure that out too. What's going on here?
Well, while you're figuring that out, I just need everyone to know that in case you doubted how pro Astros the Bullpen podcast is, the very second that I hit the go live button on this stream, Yordan Alvarez hit a 2-run bomb. So if you were wondering, I think there's a connection there. We'll go ahead and take credit for that one. So, you're welcome for bringing Yordan back healthy and hitting bombs. So, I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, look, Tom got it fixed. Nice.
I don't know
Tom's
what happened
back.
between before and after, but it went all weird.
After some technical difficulties, we are now ready to talk Texans. Tom, how are you doing today?
I'm good. Yordan Alvarez's homer literally broke my computer, and probably all of Astros Twitter right now is losing
That's how much
it.
power he's got,
I'm telling you, the Texans roster, I think it's an interesting one. I'm looking forward to talking about it. There's definitely a lot of surprises there. There was some stuff that happened between yesterday and today that's really interesting. Just looking forward to breaking it all down.
For sure. So let's just dive right into it. Obviously, there's also the situation around Joe Mixon, the Lions game. We'll get into all of it on this edition. Starting with the roster, so the Texans cut down to the 53-man roster yesterday. What was your biggest, thing that stuck out to you when you saw the initial 53-man? Like, that's out of place in a good or bad way, just positive or negative. What was the first thing that caught your eye?
Right off the bat, initially, the two tight ends. It's
100%.
just, everybody talked about tight ends. Kaylee's a tight end coach. What's going to happen with the tight end position? Who's going to come in? They trade for a tight end. And then lo and behold, the roster only has two tight ends on it. And it was the same two tight ends that they had at the end of the season. And all the other guys are just not there. So that for me, that was like the first rut-row. And what's going on here? There were some other ones, but that was the big one.
Yeah, and for me, the surprising thing, and so today they did sign Harrison Bryant to the 53-man, as far as I read. I think there may have been a little bit of confusion on that, but I'm pretty sure the initial report from Aaron Wilson was that they signed him. I didn't see a corresponding move, so I don't know if they're looking to move on from someone. It could have been a practice squad signing, but they also signed Luke Lachey, the 7th-round pick, to the practice squad. My thought is that maybe they signed both of them to the practice squad, and they're just going to elevate one of them until they see which one they like better. I just have trouble believing long-term that they're not carrying 3 tight ends on the roster. And I mean, the follow-up question to that is, who do you think is the most likely cut from the roster if they bring up a tight end? Who goes first?
I don't know. I don't think that you have to cut anybody, right? You just don't have to suit them. Because I think you get 2 elevations from the practice squad.
Well, but I'm saying if they were to sign a tight end to the roster, like they go through the elevation process and they're like, okay, we've decided this is our guy. We're going to bring you up to the roster. You're on the 53-man. We now have to make room for you. Who is the cut?
It's got to be one of the 87 D linemen. They have so many D linemen. Go look. I mean, they got so many D linemen. They've got like hurt ones, and then they've got like regular ones. It's a huge number. I get it. You want to build in the trenches. You want to have bodies. It's a war in there. But man, there's a lot of D linemen on this team.
They're carrying 10 defensive linemen. And another thing to bear in mind is that there are a couple guys that are defensive linemen that could come back at week 4. So they could want to bring back more. I'm of the belief that the guys that are on physically unable to perform or wherever they are not guys that I'd rather have on the roster over what's there. So I have trouble believing that those guys, even when they're ready, come back to the 53-man roster. But maybe that's just me. Danico Autry is an interesting question. But if I'm looking at it, I think that it either comes from the wide receiver room or the quarterback room. The Texans have carried 10 linemen before in the defensive line. D'Amico is a big believer that the trenches and linebacker need to have those guys. So I have trouble believing he shrinks that room at all. But I do believe that, and I think one of the reasons they kept Graham Mertz on the roster for the initial wave is that maybe because of his performance against Detroit, they didn't want to put him at risk of being picked up by someone else on waivers. So maybe they're letting time, get rid of everyone's memory of how good Graham Mertz did in recent memory. The other part of it is when you look at the structure of this wide receiver room, 7 wide receivers, I believe they carried 7 last season. So it's not necessarily that it makes a lot of sense for them to cut based off of history. It's just that, when we look at the prototypical wide receivers they're carrying, you've got your slot, your burners like, Christian Kirk, Jalen Knoll, your slot guys. And then you look and you've got Jaden Higgins, Nico Collins, Justin Watson. You got some bigger bodied guys. And so I think you could afford to have one less in any one of those types, whether it's Berrios or Watson. But I think Berrios has pretty firmly secured his roster spot with his special teams contributions. So that leaves me with Justin Watson as being a name that comes up, in my opinion. But I agree with you that the biggest standout is probably the tight end room. I will say when I look at the roster, I was going to go through and do line by line and show, hey, this is how many out of the whole 53-man roster that I got right on my prediction, but I never got around to it. Don't really feel like it's necessary. But one thing I will note, it's easy to get the specialists right. I think everyone who predicted the 53-man roster got the specialists right, but I got every linebacker correct for this Texans linebacker room. And there was a lot of people that predicted Nick Niemann to make the roster. I think they saw him as Neville Hewitt's replacement. I didn't see that. I don't know. Maybe I wasn't maybe I'm like out of study because I wasn't super familiar with Nick Niemann's game. But I didn't see him making the roster over the guys that they had coming back from last year. I think that, D'Amico likes working with those guys. I think they've got some potential. So for me, just wanted to put that in there. And then the other surprise on the roster, since that was mine that you said, but I do have another one in mind. In the running backs room, and it kind of correlates to the tight end room too, but not keeping Jacob Johnson and keeping British Brooks instead clearly means that British Brooks is what they view as a fullback. But to be fair, I thought Jacob Johnson had a really good preseason. I think he brings more value as a blocker and with his versatility at 2 tight end. So carrying 2 tight ends, but having Jacob Johnson on the roster makes me think they won't bring in another tight end. But with British Brooks in that room, that's another guy who I think could end up facing the chopping block if they bring in another tight end, is British Brooks. Although you have to forgive me, I'm not like super well versed in how important the fullback position is to Nick Caley's scheme. It seems like he uses it a decent bit. I mean, they run 12 personnel a lot. And so that's what makes it baffling. They're not carrying like more tight ends than they are. But yeah, I mean, outside of that, the 53-man roster was pretty much another position group that I actually got 100% correct was the offensive line. I think that was pretty self-evident. There was not really any surprises there. Those were always going to be the guys that they kept. Now, in that vein, what did you think about, the day of cuts? Adam Schefter puts out a tweet and he says, hey, a name to look out for, Cam Robinson. The Texans are looking for a trade partner. They're going to try and move on from him. What do you think of that situation? Do you think, because every move they made after that, in a lot of people's eyes, and I get it to some extent, kind of made that move make a lot less sense. I guess over time it kind of made a little sense, but What were your thoughts on that situation? That's what I want to know.
So first off, clarify. Are you saying that the fact that they didn't trade him made less sense?
So I'll go down the whole rabbit hole, right? You look at Cam Robinson being traded. My first thought was they're trying to do right by Cam Robinson. This is a team that tries to do right by its players. They don't just send guys off for the highest price. They usually try and put them in a good situation to succeed, on top of getting the compensation that they think they should get to some extent. But the other thing I thought was, Trent Brown is on the physically unable to perform list, but they're saying he could come back soon. So maybe they have confidence that he can be the depth in that room alongside Blake Fisher. And so that's why, because they did carry 4 tackles. They have 4 tackles right now. And so with that, I tweeted that out. And then the next second they said, yeah, Trent Brown's been cut. And immediately that kind of made less sense to me. Once they clarified that, Trent Brown, he wasn't going to waivers, so he could just choose to sign with the practice squad. It was just a matter of what his market was. But I reckon the Texans knew he was inclined to take a practice squad spot when they released him. And so that, I think, made it make a little more sense to me in my head, because when you have Trent Brown on your practice squad, you're then like, okay, now you have that guy, and if you move on, you can bring him up in his place if that happens. So I think it still could happen. I think that the Texans are probably still fielding offers on Cam Robinson if there are any. And they'll probably do that right up until the trade deadline. Once they feel a lot more confident in Ursary, and I saw this up. I can't say that this is something that originally came from my head. This is something I pieced together from everything I saw on my feed. But I think it makes sense that closer to the trade deadline, the Texans could move on from Cam Robinson for the appropriate draft compensation once they're comfortable with Ursary being the starter long term. But those are the things. And so I guess at the end of the day, it kind of makes sense. I want to hear your thoughts on it, though. Like, initially, I was like, we're trading Cam Robinson. Okay, we're cutting Trent Brown. Okay, well, why are we doing that then? That was kind of the flow in my head.
So how on earth I'm kind of confused. You said you nailed this position grouping in your 53 man, but you don't sound like you were sold on keeping Cam Robinson. We've talked about it at length in different podcasts where you were kind of like, he could be a guy they could trade. That, Ursary's had a good camp. Like, I'm kind of surprised that you had him on this team, even though, like, you've kind of spoke to, they could find somewhere else for Cam Robinson and all his money to go. And I actually think the other way around. I feel like Cam Robinson is the ultimate security blanket for Ursary, in the fact that what Cam Robinson is. He's serviceable. And yes, they want to see Ursary become the guy. But in the same vein, you don't want him to struggle and then have nothing to fall back to because you moved on from your security blanket. You've already committed the money. Texan cap has made it sound like it's going to be dumb to trade him because you're going to pay him regardless. I heard something from John Harris, Mark Vandermeer, John Harris. They did a breakdown. I heard on my ride home, AM 610, I think 790. I think it's 610. They did a breakdown, and John Harris was like, "What if they use 6 linemen like Buffalo does?" And you hear all the time, so-and-so reports is eligible. Cam Robinson reports is eligible because they're putting an extra lineman in to block as opposed to running out a tight end that can't block. And I never thought about that, but I kind of like that. In some sense, it's like, we're kind of tipping our hand, right? You're not going to throw to Cam Robinson, but you're also not going to get by Cam Robinson. You know what I mean? That he's not like a tight end that an edge rusher is just going to abuse. If that guy's helping Ursary chip, all of a sudden that sounds a whole lot better than Dalton Schultz is on the end getting blown by insert edge rusher. And I don't know. I could be for that. Now, after that, obviously, they went and they signed Harrison Bryant. So now they have 3 tight ends eventually, right? I think he's going to be like a practice squad guy that they elevate and they'll demote Graham Mertz or something like that. That way they keep him, they hide him from whatever, because I believe the Graham Mertz thing was more about, okay, we can't expose him because he looks so good. Somebody's going to take him. But if we keep him on our 53 and we move him down to the practice squad after the fact, well, then we kind of protect him, kind of like a Rule 5 thing in baseball. So I think that's what they did there. I think that's what they did with British Brooks. I could see him going down if the tight end needs to move, whatever. One of those two guys could move around so that they would have the flexibility, especially when Mixon comes back, because I do believe Mixon will come back, and I think we'll get into that later.
No, yeah, 100%. I like what you said about tackles reporting as eligible because it creates increased odds of one of my favorite situations in football, which is the thick six. I love the opportunity to see a thick six, see a big boy get a touchdown. So last one we had was defensive with Derek Barnett. And honestly, a defensive end is on the fringe of thick six because a little more athletic position. But yeah, so but to speak to your question about me I was right on the offensive line. When I made my 53-man roster prediction, there was no rumors of him being traded. It didn't make any sense to cut him just because it seemed like a pretty fresh idea that Ursary is the starter, and Ursary showed out. There's no getting around that. But he did also win his position because of an injury, so it's not like he beat out Cam Robinson because Cam Robinson didn't play well. So from that perspective, I wasn't like, okay, well, it makes sense to cut him because he lost the position. He simply was injured, and
Wow, Brett. Brandon. How do you
Tinder
know,
has a lot
bro?
of
Tell us your ways. Tell us the perusing through Tinder, sir.
Brandon would know about all the thick sixes on Tinder. We can tell us all about it later. But I think that that my prediction of Cam Robinson being on the roster predicated on one, not the rumor from Adam Schefter not being out that he was a trade candidate, but also the way he lost his starting spot didn't really, to me, necessitate trading him. Now, am I surprised that the rumor came out that he was being put up for trade? No. I mean, when you have a guy that you're paying that much money, you kind of would hope that you can get a pick. Now, I also agree with the thought process. There was very few situations where the Texans were going to get a piece of draft compensation that was significant enough to make up for the loss of depth at tackle. But that, I think, plays into the classic Texans thought process of we want to do right by our player. They would have taken a 5th or 6th round pick to give Cam Robinson the opportunity to start at left tackle for insert team that needed it. There just wasn't a lot of need for starting left tackles. If he was willing to shift to right tackle, maybe, but I think they wanted to give him a starting opportunity there. And so, I mean, that's the best I can explain it. By the way, the Astros just beat the Rockies, which I would say is as expected, but last night didn't quite go as expected. So
sweeps are hard, man.
Sweeps are hard.
Nobody wants to hear it, but sweeps are hard. The Dodgers lost to the Rockies too, and nobody talks about it.
No, yeah, I agree with you. And let's see. So Brandon's asking this question here. I'll cover this real quick. Where would they need more depth than tackle to protect Stroud, though? Honestly, I don't think tackle outside of Laramie Tunsil's false start problems has ever been the problem for this offensive line. I'm not saying they played perfect last season, but I think that the problem was the interior offensive line was getting blown up, and CJ never had a clean pocket, never really had the opportunity to set. I mean, when he did, he was so shell-shocked from how many times he was getting pummeled in the backfield that he couldn't quite get his mind right. So we saw a preview this preseason of what it looks like when CJ has a clean pocket and time to think. We saw it in the joint practice with the Lions. When he's got that, he is a great quarterback. And I would suspect there's been a reset that mentally CJ Stroud's ready to go into the season with an offensive line that at worst should be average. And an average offensive line, I think, is far better than anything CJ Stroud has had since he's been in the league. And it should be enough to catapult this offense into certain conversations, at least on the fringe level, and be enough to make this team a contender. But what do you think about that question, Tom?
I mean, you're 100% right that the guard issue was the major issue. And I agree with your point about the line not being like extraordinary the years prior. I think any quarterback will tell you, and I think they spoke to this at some point in the season last year. The worst pressure a quarterback can receive is through the middle, is in his face. The edge rushers that come from the outside, you can kind of do stuff. You can step up. You can shift around. But the pressure up the middle through the guards and through the center, it's just really hard to navigate. There's not a whole lot of places for you to go. It kind of cuts off the field. If you're going to go to the right or you're going to go to the left, you cut out so much. So I think if they can just give him clean in front of him to be able to slide and shift, I think that's going to be the hugest thing for them. So it's going to be really interesting to see how the guards play, because I want to say he did Stephen A. He did a little media tour the last couple of days. CJ did, and I really think he said that Howard's the other tackle. So if he's not going to be the guard, then you need those other guys to be. You know what I mean? I think tackle's where he should be, but we always question. Will he stay there? Will they shift him to guard? I think he wants to be the right tackle.
I think so too. I mean, and that's been a discussion for Texans fans pretty much since Titus Howard has been on the team, in terms of where he should play. And I think the consensus has always been that he's best at right tackle. Just if we're looking at Titus Howard plays his best football at right tackle. But if we're looking at the Texans offensive line and we're looking at the structure of who should be starting where, the common question or the common problem has been that Titus Howard is better at guard, or at least high enough above the next up guard on the roster that it makes more sense to play him at guard than it does to play him at tackle. Because, like I said, I don't think tackle has been a problem for the Texans outside of Laramie Tunsil's false start issues. I think that tackle has been solid. It's been at the level that the Texans would need it to be this season, which is average at worst. And so I think that this Texans team will improve with Titus Howard at tackle because he'll play better than he did at guard. And one of the reasons that's possible is scheme. We've spoken to it all offseason, and I said it early when the Texans traded for Ed Ingram after they sent off Kenyon Green. I spoke to the fact that ideally Ed Ingram steps up and plays his best ball, because if he does that, one, you bump Titus Howard out to tackle. Instantly a better team across the offensive line for that reason alone. But then also, Ed Ingram's in a contract year. He either proves himself and gets paid a lot of money by another team, or he's like, wow, the Texans gave me a chance. I got really good here. I understand the guard market. If you give me this, I'll stay here and play guard. Either way, it's win-win for the Texans because we're looking for them to become what they are in the interior defensive line on the other side of the ball, which is a team that can take 1 and 2 year contracts, produce at a consistent level, very serviceable. They took, when Sheldon Rankins left, they brought in players that replaced his production throughout the entire season. It didn't skip a beat. Didn't matter. Sheldon Rankins is back. They can have that production back again. I trust that whatever issues he had in Cincinnati can be worked through, and he'll play a lot better here just because this is a team that's doing a lot better defensively, has the culture set, and I think he's shown already that he fits it. He's just come back to it. So I think that at the end of the day, Titus Howard is best fit at tackle. I don't think tackle has ever really been a problem for the Texans, and the best thing that's happened is this scheme giving the Texans the ability to play these guards that they have. Bear in mind, Laken Tomlinson and Ed Ingram were 2 of the 3 guards that ranked worse than Kenyon Green per PFF in pass blocking. These are 2 guys that did not do well in their previous destinations by measurables that, I mean, obviously we've spoken to how we feel about PFF. It only is valid if it confirms the eye test. And I'll tell you, every fan of the Vikings, 49ers, and Seahawks that has seen those 2 guys play over the past couple seasons was pretty much like, wow, is this what the Texans are doing to fix their offensive line? Because it's not really doing it. There's not really a lot of and that's one of the reasons why the national media opinion of the Texans offensive line has pretty much remained the same. A lot of the improvements and changes they've made have been bringing in personnel that fit what they do and fit this new scheme. So they're going to look better than the national media thinks they do, because in their previous schemes, they didn't fit. They didn't look good. So I have high hopes for this interior offensive line. And honestly, I mean, I thought Jarrett Patterson was a shoo-in for center. I'm surprised they were able to bring in a guy from the Patriots just, off waivers and put him in as a starter. I mean, I'm interested to see how it does. Every indication in preseason, which obviously, I'm not saying preseason is all you really need, but you see them in the pads on the field against some level of talent, and it looked good so far. Will they be tested? Yeah, but I'm confident they can step through it. Now, I want to get into Joe Mixon now. We'll probably end it on this. I think we've adequately covered the roster. Might talk a little bit about the Lions game, but let's see. I liked this comment from Brandon. Reports are Mixon hurt his foot kicking Kenyon Green and Shaq Mason off of his O-line. I mean, I don't blame him. Granted, like run blocking, it seemed like was the only thing Kenyon Green could do at least half decently. But let's talk about Joe Mixon. That's my segue with that comment. How do you feel about? I'm going to point out the obvious here, and I'll elaborate on it more when I get my answer. But obviously, and I put if you're on the Bleacher Report app, you've probably seen on the Texans feed, my video was about this today. The situation's looking eerily similar to Christian Harris last season. And so I don't like being pessimistic. I don't like being down on it. I am having trouble finding the silver lining with this situation, but I'd love to hear it from you, Tom, if you've got it.
I don't know why people do this. I don't know why people feel they have to be told what exactly is going on. I need the answers. I need dates. I need times. I need exacts. I don't want to sit here and tell you that, Christian Harris and Joe Mixon have injuries that are super, super, critical and they won't play. I think if if Joe Mixon was going to be out more than the 4 games, I think they would have done something with the roster differently to accommodate that. Maybe go get another running back. I don't know, but everybody's gloom and doom because Houston has this thing going on right now where certain teams are not giving all the details and players are injured more than they should. The Astros have really done this, I think, because it was a thing for them and now it's a thing for the Texans and everybody's got PTSD. I don't think that the Joe Mixon injury is as serious as, everybody wants to make it. Houston Streston's had video in June or May where Mixon was working out and getting ready. So, I mean, if the dude was in a boot or in a wheelchair, that'd be different, to see him on his feet. I don't know. I mean, are they telling us everything? Is it clear cut? Oh, this is what happened. No. But if I'm over here going, oh, Christian Harris 2.0, well, then you've already given up on the season for Joe Mixon. You're already, he's done. And I don't want to live in that world. I didn't want Christian Harris to do that, but we may never know exactly what happened there. I just hope that it's 4 weeks and then we're talking about Joe Mixon running the rock.
I hope so too. And just so looking at the timeline of Joe Mixon's return, the Texans are known to hold players out if they're close and not ready to go. The Texans don't have any reason to rush Joe Mixon back. The running back room is pretty solid, at least, unless it shows otherwise throughout the first 4 weeks. Just on paper right now, it looks like a really good room. But looking at the schedule, week 5 is the Ravens and week 6 is the bye week. If Joe Mixon is any bit unready to go, especially with the Ravens on the schedule, I could foresee them holding him out that week just because of that. So then the earliest you see Joe Mixon is week 7. So that gives me some hope that maybe they saw that and thought, okay, well, we can IR him. We can roll into week 7 with a healthy Joe Mixon. But like I said, history is very important to me. It was my favorite subject in school. It's indicative. One of the things that was brought to me recently that it doesn't really concern me, but it's obviously a historic precedent, is that this season is the Texans have been to the playoffs for the past 2 years in a row. You know what the Texans have never done in their history? They have never made the playoffs 3 years in a row. So that's other fans in the AFC South are like, your team has never made the playoffs 3 years in a row. The AFC South is up for grabs, as if there's any reason to believe that based off of the product the other teams are putting on the field. It's coming from Titans fans, by the way, which is crazy to me. But so historical precedent doesn't always play out. I mean, I watched that whole discussion back in the early 2010s when Romo was quarterbacking the Cowboys, and they were like, oh, well, the Cowboys beat the Giants twice in the regular season, so they can't win in their rematch in the playoffs. And it's like, that's like some superstitious, dramatic stuff that they're going through right there. But there is reason to look back at history and see what's happened and go, okay, can we overcome it? The Texans have never won in the divisional round. The Texans have never. There are a lot of things we've seen, and history has continued to repeat itself. So it is a one-time event. It's not like the Texans have consistently done this, but I challenge you with this. How many other injuries have the Texans had this offseason where they've been like, we don't want to tell you, and then, didn't tell us, and the guy came back quietly? Like, I trust that it might have happened, but it has also happened to where the Texans with the Christian Harris situation to this point is eerily similar. Christian Harris got injured in the last game of the Texans season against Baltimore in 2024 in the playoffs for the 2023 season. He spent the entire offseason kind of like it's going to take a minute. It's just calf injury, but he's working through it, so he'll be back. Don't worry. There's a lot of optimism for him to play week 1 throughout the offseason, and the Texans didn't necessarily say that he would, but they didn't deny it. They just kind of let fans and media run with that narrative and kind of give this playful optimism that Christian Harris was going to be back week 1. And then it came the end of the preseason. We hadn't really seen a whole lot of him at all. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, actually, he's going on IR. The Texans literally released a statement on their social media account like the day before saying Joe Mixon's going on IR. It's like, okay, cool. You probably knew that a lot sooner than now. I don't know why we're waiting until now to tell everyone. And it's not any of their business, right? I don't think the Texans care about this, but as a fan, like, this is the reason why I don't do any fantasy drafts until now. I haven't set up any of my Texans fantasy leagues yet because I'm like, I don't want to risk drafting too soon and taking Joe Mixon at all. Because at this point, I'm not taking him in any of my fantasy drafts. Like him not starting till week 7, he's basically in the same boat as Rashee Rice, except for could be worse. In terms of when is he going to play? So I look at it, and so far historically it's tracking with the Christian Harris situation, and we're seeing, when that happened last year, everyone's like, hey, D'Amico, like, why does the organization not like share the status of the players? Why are we not getting accurate updates on like what Christian Harris is going through? And it's the same, well, we got to protect the players. Medical information, not public information. You don't have a right to know that. The reporting could be off. It's a report first, ask questions later. It's about being first and not being right. Like a lot of heavy accusations. And, as one of my old buddies in the Navy would call it, deny, counter accuse. Just like, no, we're not doing that. We're not. And you are the worst. And that's why we're not doing that. So, I mean, it's just tracking eerily similar. I'm not, and I'm not, Paul Revere riding through the streets of Houston like Joe Mixon's not playing. Prepare yourselves. But like, I mean, it is a possibility. I mean, it's something that has crossed my mind that it is possible that Joe Mixon could return in week 15, make no useful impact on this Texans team, take a couple snaps in the postseason, and then still be injured this time next year. Because that's pretty much what Christian Harris is. Christian Harris, we hadn't gotten like, hey, he's going to be ready to go and he's the starter week 1. We've just gotten, he's on the roster now. So that's a step forward from last offseason. We're not seeing Christian Harris on IR again, which is, I guess, a huge plus. It means he's close. But no one said to us directly, Christian Harris is good to go and he will be starting as the Texans linebacker this week or against the Rams or whatever. So I don't know. It's a little melodramatic. I'm a melodramatic guy sometimes, so sue me. Don't sue me, but I mean,
All I'm going to say is this whole narrative that everybody's drawing up is eerily similar, to use the phrase, to the CJ Stroud stuff. CJ Stroud's not going to throw. What's wrong with CJ Stroud?
To be fair, there was something wrong with CJ Stroud. I have it on good authority what happened with CJ. I'm not going to put it out there.
CJ Stroud got shoulder surgery, and like, no,
he didn't get surgery, but I mean,
you know what I mean. Whatever it was, we're not privy to it. But the fact of the matter is like, he still played. He's still going to play, and it's not, I have on good authority and this and that. Like, for me, I can't do anything with the stuff that doesn't get said. You know what I mean? You can be the insider here, there, or wherever, but if it's not reported, it's not reported. And there's nothing you can do with it. I can't be upset that I don't know if Schefter's not putting it out there. You know what I mean? If the team's not putting it out there, I can't be upset. Like,
I mean, here's the deal, right? So to compare the situations, right? Joe Mixon in May is reported with an injury, doesn't participate. If he does, so let's mirror those situations. CJ Stroud is reported not throwing, not going to participate. He's dealing with a shoulder thing. People freak out. It's instantly a story. Everyone's talking about it for both players. And then in the next set of off-season activities, CJ Stroud participates and throws. And now no one's talking about that. Occasionally I've heard bring it up, but like CJ throughout the entire offseason has been listed as healthy, has played, has shown up, and has given us no reason to be concerned. Since the moment that Joe Mixon went out early in the offseason, he has been in and out. He has been kind of like toyed in front of our faces like, look, here's Joe Mixon. Maybe he'll play week 1. And kind of like, okay, well, he's working out on the sideline. Well, he's doing all this stuff without him actually doing anything. And then the day before we're supposed to cut the roster to 53, the Texans go, tomorrow at 3, we're going to put Joe Mixon on the non-football injury list, which is interesting. And the non-football injury list, it's not anything he suffered last season. It's something that happened in the offseason. And I've been told a couple of things about what happened there. I think if you look back through my Twitter history, you can see a vague description of that. Not trying to get too deep in it, but I mean, it's just the way they handled it. And it doesn't feel like I don't feel like the Texans are like the Astros. I feel like the Astros do that with every player. I feel like every time anyone gets injured, it could be 60-day IL, it could be 10-day IL, and there's no telling. They'll start them on 10-day IL, and they'll just up it and tell the public every day when they're asked about it, oh, he's doing good, and then just carry on. The Texans don't do that with every player, which is why this Joe Mixon situation is different from the CJ Stroud situation, and it's just different in general. It feels a lot like the Christian Harris situation. That's the last time I can remember the Texans being like, what? We're not being super elusive of you and not telling you things. This is just what it is. He's just okay, and he'll be okay, and we'll keep you updated. We're assessing it as it comes. Our all coach speak for it's bad, but we don't want to tell you it's bad, so we're just going to keep telling you that it's probably okay. So, I mean, that's just kind of where I'm at. And that's why I'm being a little melodramatic about it. I hope and pray that week 5 or week 7, the Texans come out and say, yeah, Joe Mixon's going to play. We've activated him. And then mic drop and everyone can be happy that he's done that. I hope for my sake that he plays at least week 7 because I have the over on an 835.5 yard season for him that I made before I knew all of the information that I know now. And it's not looking good.
I wonder if this is about, and you know, since we're playing the well, what is it? What is it? Why is it? You know, yeah, he got hurt or whatever. I wonder if this is about age. I wonder if this is about wear and tear. This dude's been in the league forever. He's ran forever, and I think they're worried about, you know, and him sustaining an injury due to fatigue. And this is a way to protect him and go, okay, we're not going to rush you out there. We're not going to, you know what I mean? We have Chubb. We have these guys. And in essence, this could be really like the ultimate handoff, right? Chubb could go nuts for 6 weeks. Bye week comes, Mixon comes back in. Then it goes from like Chubb, 70% Chubb, 30% Damian Pierce to 50-50. Yeah, right. 50-50 Mixon, Chubb. And then it's like, good to go.
Sorry. No, yeah. I mean, I hope it is. I've spoken to the fact that I think that Chubb came here because he thought that he was going to be able to kind of ease in. And so this is not ideal from that perspective, but it could be that he was like, I can be a great running back and I see my opportunity. But to clarify, I'll say it here, right? The rumor on the streets is that Joe Mixon early in the offseason was dealing with some pain and took a pain treatment that adversely affected him and sidelined him for a whole month. He couldn't really do much of anything. And then he's worked his way back. And so it's unclear to me as it stands if it's related to it. But that information was relayed to me around the time the Texans signed Nick Chubb. So I think maybe the Texans were in the loop on that. And that kind of takes away from my perspective of, Nick Chubb coming here because he doesn't expect to be able to step up right away, because part of the negotiation could have been, hey man, take a discount. We'll let you into the fold. Mixon, maybe not ready week 1. So you're going to be the guy short term, and we need you to be here. So there's a lot, like you said, if it's not reported on, what do we know about it? It's only hearsay until someone, paid a lot more than me to talk about it, puts their name by it. And so, what can you do?
You know what I feel, especially in football, there's just no secrets. Like Shefty and those guys are incredibly good. Incredibly good. So for us to think that they're hiding some sort of injury, the Christian Harris thing was weird. I think it'll always be weird. I think it's unique to itself because again, a whole year went and we didn't hear Shefty. We didn't hear name your analyst report on Christian Harrison. What was going on? Nobody knew anything.
I mean, yeah, I feel on that, but I also feel like the Texans have shown a trend of being the outlier when it comes to that. There are a lot of things that they manage to keep under wraps a little longer than other teams do, but I don't know. On that note, Tom, do you have anything more to say about the Texans before we go? We will be back next week before the season starts to do another live stream. I think we'll have a preview out that Friday too to talk more specifically about the Texans Rams game. But yeah, Tom, anything else to say before we bring this thing to a close?
No. I really think the roster is really solid. Depth is a concern for me in some places. Cornerback, I think, secondary as a whole, depth is a concern for me. CJ Gardner-Johnson needs to play a lot right now, and I hope that he's healthy because he had a scare, and I hope he's all the way back to that, and that guy is bulletproof for as long as he can be, because there's not much behind him. Other than that, I'm really excited to see what this offense looks like with CJ running it, like calling plays. He talked about that on ESPN and some of the other places he went where, it's something I got to do in college. It's something I got to do in high school, and now I'm going to get back to it. I didn't get to do it at all in my first 2 years. It was like they fed me the play and I ran it, and now he's going to be able to assess and run what he thinks he should run. So it's going to be exciting. I think fans have to have some level of patience, because I think everybody expects them to just hit the ground running and be perfect. And I think with a rookie offensive coordinator and a rookie O-line coach, rookie as in he's the main guy, I think there's going to be mistakes, and you got to have to be okay with them.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited to see what this offense can do. We got a question on the Instagram chat that I forgot about, so I'll address it here, about whether or not the Texans should bring Shiloh Sanders into the practice squad. I think the Texans have fleshed out their practice squad, but I think I speak for Tom and I both when I say this, so that's why I feel comfortable giving this answer just for the both of us. Please correct me if I'm wrong. When I think of the Sanders brothers, the player who comes to mind is Tim Tebow, and when he's a starter, it's fine. You don't mind the bright lights on him because he's the starter. The second that he's not contending for a starting position, there's not a roster in this league that wants the media attention that a player like that draws to a position like that. A practice squad safety should not be the subject of any questions from anyone regarding the Texans throughout the season. Just like the third string quarterback on the Browns shouldn't be a main storyline going into the season, but that's the way it is. And the Browns, as an organization, have shown poor judgment numerous times, so it's no wonder that they are the organization that is bearing that burden for the league, and for that I salute them. But that is, I'm not for signing either one of the Sanders brothers unless the need for our team is so strong that there's a possibility they could start. And at that point, there's bigger fish to fry than how much media attention a guy you're signing is going to get. So did I hit the nail on the head there, Tom?
I would say so. Sounds about right to me.
All right. With that, thanks for tuning into the Bullpen. I've been James Roy. You can find me at James Roy NFL on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. Tom is at Third Coast Tom on Twitter, and at TC Tom1 on Instagram. And make sure you're following the bullpen. Stay locked in for this season. We're ramping it up with recaps, previews. I believe we'll be able to keep the live streams going throughout the season this season. But just make sure you're tuned in, because we'll keep you in the loop on everything Texans. So as always, stay classy, Houston, and vamos Texans.